I'm Skyler Buck. I'm with the Northern region, and I get to speak to you today about public water suppliers, what they are and how they're treated a little bit differently. So essentially, so this is what we're going to go through, what they are, how they're treated differently, and specifically with three different aspects of the state engineer and how we deal with them. So, and we'll go through an example. I'll try to go through it quickly since we're running a little bit behind. So, all right. So here are the four different entities that would qualify as public water suppliers, and we can all read those. We'll go through them more detailed in further slides, and we'll get good definitions. So we'll go to the statute for that because it's really fun to read statute, especially in the afternoon when you're already tired. So whenever I read statute, I always, as we go through this, you'll see the ands and ors because that's always important because it can get confusing. So anyway, the first is a public entity. That's real easy. That'd be your municipalities, your counties, the state, a department of the state, the United States of America, or any of their departments. The next is a water corporation, as defined in, it's a different code, it's not 73, so this is kind of exciting. It's 54-2-1. And essentially, as long as they are regulated by the Public Service Commission, they're considered a public water supplier. The next is a community water system, and so that supplies water to at least 100 connections year-round, so 100 residents, or I believe it's 200 residents year-round. So it's one or the other. And then it's important to note that those are not the same as the requirements for being a public water supplier for Department of Drinking Water. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sorry. Thank you. And then who's voting members, this is still continuing on with that. So the members have to own a share in the community water system, and they have to receive their water in proportion to the shares that they own in the water system. And then they have to pay the rates that are set by them. The last one, these are really rare because this has an and in it. But this is one in which, so they're water users associations where a public entity owns at least 70% of the outstanding shares, and they are a local sponsor for a project with the Bureau of Reclamation. So I've heard there's a handful of them. I know there's an example like the Provo water users is an example of one that actually exists, but I don't know any in my area. So sometimes people ask, well, how do we become a public water supplier? And I guess the answer is you act like one, fake it till you make it kind of thing. But it would have to be through one of those four ways. And there's no, the point here, there's no application. There's no, application you submit to us and we're like, oh yeah, you're a public water supplier. So here's the first thing is they're treated slightly different in extensions of time. So one, we'll talk about how a regular water right owner would be treated versus a public water supplier. So regular non-public water supplier, they would have to show due diligence. So, when they get their approval, if they're not complete in a timely manner, they'd have to show that they were working towards completing their project. Like, I ran out of money, that's an example, but they could say, look, we've dug a well, we've started building our house, we've started putting infrastructure in. So that's required, either that or reasonable cause delay. And then the other thing is they can get extensions, but there are no extensions for a regular person beyond 50 years. So if you're not done in 50 years, you don't get to finish it. Whereas for a public water supplier, really, for the first 50 years, all they have to do is hold a water right. So as long as they hold a water right for the future needs, they're good. So their extensions, like it's funny because I get extensions and they'll write like paragraphs and really complex. All they need to say is that they're holding it for the public benefit, and boom, it's approved. And they can even be extended beyond 50 years. They just have to provide us with a 40-year plan. which would show that they would need that water right. Yes, sir. Oh, I should mention, I do not give awards for asking the most questions, but please ask questions if I can, clarify things.
For the future demand, what if you are a future demand project that comes in and you're being told, no, we're holding this for other future demand? Like, is there any
So
constraints as to what future demand things can be held for?
So, so the city's telling you they don't want to give you their water?
Yes, it's
So we
being
don't
held
get
for some
involved.
other time.
That's their water right to do what they want with it. So yeah, if they didn't want to include you as part of their future demand, that's their business. We don't tell the cities how to operate. Okay, so real quick, we'll go over just what a 40-year plan might include, or what it needs to include. So it'd show the 40-year demand, obviously, like showing the population growing, the projected use of water. They can show that the works have been built. So like as they're getting ready, that they've built larger pipelines, brought more wells online. And then they'll need to include what's already certificated of their water rights. So they'll already have some water rights that are good, and they'll have more that they're filing extensions on to try and meet the additional needs. And then the plan will be changed because population doesn't always grow the same. Sometimes, like right now, Utah's booming, it's growing fast, but there's certain areas where maybe it's not growing, so it can change over time, and it should be water right specific. So forfeiture, this is also another interesting one. So I think they've talked about a little bit already. But if you're just a regular water right holder, if you do not use your water right for a period of 7 years, you can be subject to forfeiture. So once again, we don't go out and take your water, but you're subject to it. As far as for public water suppliers, prior to 2008, any water right they owned is not subject to forfeiture at all, period. After 2008, if they acquire a water right, they need to get an approved change application before it would be. Yes.
We have a question from the chat. It says, are 40-year plans on file with DWR and accessible?
So a 40-year plan that is...
Sorry, let me get this.
I got this one.
Oh, okay.
So any 40-year plan that is submitted as part of an extension request is public record and will be on the appropriate water right files. But do they mean Division of Water Resources? Because Division of Water Resources also has 40-year plans that municipalities are to submit.
DWRs, is that Division of Water Resources? Or?
It could be, or it could be us. But it's all... it's all public. It's all public record and can be requested. If they can't find it, we can help them find it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yeah, I think we covered that. So yeah, they have to have an approved change application to not be subject to the rebuttable presumption of quality impairment. And then this one's kind of funny. So this one I run into quite a bit because historically how we've treated them has also changed. So in the proofing process, public water suppliers used to be able to just, they'd file for a change, say they wanted to add a well, a change application, they'd construct the well, and all we'd really need from them was that the well was drilled and that they had a pump in there sufficient to meet the water right. So if they had those two things, we were like, good, certificated, you got, another 5 CFS. Now, the way we do it is it's not just that. They have to, one, we still need to know the capacity of the well. They would still, the real difference here is that they have to go through and they have to show that they're using more water. So, and we'll go through an example here shortly, but if they already had a right for 5 CFS and they're trying to certificate another right for 5 CFS, but they're only using 5 CFS, we don't certificate anything unless there's additional water to be certificated. So they have to show that they're using more water. And then another thing, they are allowed to just certificate to their service area, which can be changed. So, all right, so here's an example. So there's a city, whatever the city is, they have 2 water rights, one that diverts 4 CFS, another that diverts 5 CFS for 6,500 acre feet. So they have 2 wells, and the capacity of the first well is 6 CFS, the well of the second is 5 CFS. The 2 wells are reporting info, and so what they report to us every year is they're only diverting 2,000 acre feet annually. For some reason, this city decides to buy a water right from a farmer for 600 acre feet of water, and they file a change application. Now, when the city goes to file proof, what can be certificated? That's the question. And in this case, nothing. And I think the next slide kind of shows this nicely. So from the things that we check, so one, we have their existing water rights. You add those all up, 6,500 acre feet with the farmers, so they have 7,100 acre feet total. That's great. The capacity of the wells were sufficient. That looks fine. So right there, you see the capacities. The capacities are greater than, their total 7,100 acre feet. That's fine. But they're only using 2,000 acre feet. We're not going to certificate those water rights because they're not using more water than they already have certificated. And that's the big thing with these. So then, we have to say, hey, you're probably going to be best served to withdraw your proof because you have no additional water to prove up on right now.
So in that instance, would it be beneficial and possible for the city to prove up on this farmer's 600 acre feet? Because that just as likely as not, has an older priority. Can you prove up on a portion of what you are using?
So his question is if shouldn't they prove up on the farmer's water right? The problem is that they already have water rights that are perfected. So
Water right 1 and 2 are perfected.
yeah, so the existing water rights are already there, and additionally, which we won't get into. I think they'll get into it later. But you also have priority of change versus the actual priority, which can complicate things. But in this case, yeah, they already have water rights that they're there that are existing, so you couldn't do what you're suggesting.
Can you go back on just the basics? Is perfected water right the same as one that's already been proved up on? Is that?
Yes. So a perfected water right is the same as something that's already been proved up on. Yes. Yes, sir, question. Well, how long's your question? I don't feel like repeating too long, so.
So, to perfect the farmer's water right, the developer brings in that water, but he's in the process of going through the city to get the development done. But can that, can't you give an extension on that if the development's not complete?
Sure, they can, so yes, in this case, you would give them an extension. That's exactly what they'd want. They'd want to file an extension, push it off down the road. You just can't perfect it. The last step of the water right, where you file proof and get it certificated, you can't certificate water that you're not using. So, yes. And then this is another way that they're treated differently. So normally, if you're using water in one place, you decided to expand it, use it somewhere else, you'd have to file a change application. Public water suppliers, as their service areas change, they can use water in those areas as long as no other things are being changed, points of diversion or quantities of water. So I think that's pretty much it. Okay, here's why it matters. We pretty much went over all this. You can read this. Does anybody have any questions or feel like they get this or that I've totally ruined it? Whatever. Nobody. Okay, thank you.